Get that guy away from my equipment. Pop star Madison Blake screamed when she saw the Palestinian man adjusting her microphone settings. I'm not recording with some random Middle Eastern creep in the room. She had no idea she was insulting the legendary producer who had launched her career. Khalil Mansour stood perfectly still as the young pop star's voice echoed through the pristine recording studio at Harmony Records in Los Angeles. At 45, he had produced albums for the biggest names in the music industry, won 8 Grammy Awards, and built a reputation as one of the most innovative sound engineers in modern music. But today, dressed casually in jeans and a simple button-down shirt, checking equipment in his own studio, he was just another suspicious Middle Eastern man to be removed. Madison Blake, 23 years old and riding high on her 3rd platinum album, had arrived at the studio expecting the full VIP treatment. Her latest single had just hit #1, and she was scheduled to record vocals for what everyone expected would be another chart-topping hit. But seeing an unfamiliar Arab man touching her equipment had triggered every prejudice her privileged upbringing had programmed into her mind. Security. Madison shouted toward the control room, where her manager Trevor Walsh was reviewing contracts. There's some terrorist in here messing with my stuff. Studio engineer Mike Rodriguez looked up from his mixing board with confusion. He had worked at Harmony Records for 5 years and had never seen Madison react so violently to anyone. Madison, that's... I don't care who he is, she interrupted, her voice rising to near hysteria. Get him out now, or I'm leaving. Khalil continued adjusting the microphone settings with practiced precision, his movements economical and expert. He had spent the morning fine-tuning the acoustic properties of Studio A for Madison's session, using techniques he had pioneered over 2 decades in the music industry. But his calm professionalism only seemed to increase Madison's agitation. Did you hear me? She screamed directly at Khalil. Get your hands off my equipment and get out of here. Trevor Walsh emerged from the control room, his face flushed with the kind of panic that came from managing temperamental superstars. Madison's tantrums were legendary in the industry, but this seemed more intense than usual. Madison, calm down, Trevor said, though his own eyes fixed on Khalil with suspicion. I'll handle this situation. Head of security Danny Torres arrived within minutes, his hand instinctively positioned near his weapon as he assessed what appeared to be a standard celebrity versus intruder situation. In 15 years of protecting music industry VIPs, he had dealt with numerous security breaches, stalkers, and unauthorized personnel in recording facilities. Sir, Torres addressed Khalil, I need to see your identification and authorization to be in this restricted area. Khalil looked up from the sound board he had been calibrating, his dark eyes calm despite the hostility surrounding him. I don't carry authorization for my own studio, he said quietly. The claim drew incredulous laughter from Madison and her entourage. Your studio? She mocked. Right. I suppose you own the whole building too. Sound engineer Rodriguez felt a growing sense of unease. There was something familiar about the man's bearing, his obvious expertise with the equipment, his casual familiarity with the studio layout. But the pressure from Madison's camp was overwhelming. Sir, Torres continued, Harmony Records is a private facility with strict security protocols. If you can't provide proper identification, I'll need to escort you from the premises. Studio assistant Jenny Kim, fresh from Berklee College of Music, watched the confrontation with growing discomfort. She had studied the history of modern music production, and something about this situation felt wrong. The man's technical knowledge, his comfort with the equipment, it didn't match the narrative being constructed around him. Check his ID for terrorist connections, Madison demanded, her voice carrying the entitled authority of someone accustomed to immediate compliance. I'm not risking my safety for some random Arab guy who probably doesn't even belong in this country. The racist comment sent ripples of discomfort through the room. Several staff members shifted uneasily, but no one spoke up to challenge the superstar whose album sales paid their salaries. Khalil reached slowly into his wallet, his movements deliberately transparent to avoid escalating the situation. But before he could withdraw his identification, Madison's backup singer, Keisha Johnson, arrived for the session. Keisha took one look at the tense scene and immediately recognized what was happening. She had witnessed similar incidents throughout her career, talented musicians of color being treated as threats or intruders in spaces where they belonged. Madison, Keisha said carefully, maybe we should. Stay out of this, Keisha, Madison snapped. I'm not putting up with security risks just to be politically correct. But Keisha's presence had emboldened Jenny Kim, who finally found her voice. Excuse me, but shouldn't we actually verify who this person is before calling him a terrorist? Miss Kim, Trevor Walsh warned, this is not your concern. Return to your duties immediately. Khalil's phone buzzed with an incoming call. The caller ID was visible to several people nearby. Universal Music Group, CEO David Chun. Probably his handler, Madison said dismissively. These people always have suspicious international connections. Torres was growing impatient. Sir, I need your identification now, or you're coming with me. Before you arrest me, Khalil said calmly, I suggest you call Harmony Records owner and ask about studio authorization for Khalil Mansour. The name hit Mike Rodriguez like lightning. Khalil Mansour. He had seen that name on hundreds of album credits, Grammy nominations, industry awards. One of the most successful producers in modern music history. Wait, Rodriguez said urgently. Did you say Khalil Mansour? Who's Khalil Mansour? Madison demanded impatiently. Rodriguez looked at her with amazement. He's only produced like half the hit songs from the past 20 years, including your first 3 albums. The revelation sent shockwaves through the studio. Madison's face went pale as the implications began to sink in. Her biggest hits, the songs that had made her famous, had been produced by the man she had just called a terrorist. But Madison's manager wasn't backing down. That's impossible. Khalil Mansour is a major industry figure. He wouldn't be sneaking around studios in casual clothes. I wasn't sneaking, Khalil replied with quiet dignity. I was preparing the studio for today's session, which, incidentally, I was scheduled to produce. Trevor Walsh fumbled for his phone, frantically scrolling through emails and contracts. His face grew increasingly pale as he found the confirmation. Recording session, Studio A, producer, Khalil Mansour. This can't be real, Madison stammered, her bravado crumbling as she realized the magnitude of her mistake. Khalil's phone rang again. This time, he answered it on speaker, his voice carrying clearly through the stunned studio. Khalil, this is David Chun from Universal. I've been getting calls about some kind of incident at your studio. Are you okay? The voice of Universal Music Group CEO filled the room, making it clear that the man Madison had tried to have arrested was indeed a major industry figure. I'm fine, David, Khalil replied calmly, though I seem to have been mistaken for a terrorist by one of my artists. The silence in the studio was deafening. Madison Blake, pop superstar, had just been exposed as having racially profiled the producer who had created her career. Khalil, Chin's voice continued, I want you to know that this incident will be investigated thoroughly. This behavior is completely unacceptable. Security officer Torres slowly backed away, realizing he had been moments away from arresting one of the music industry's most powerful figures. Jenny Kim pulled out her phone and began documenting what was clearly going to become a major industry scandal. The footage would show a Grammy-winning producer being treated as a terrorist threat by the artist whose career he had built. Mr. Mansour, Torres said respectfully, I sincerely apologize. If I had known. If you had known what? Khalil asked quietly. If you had known I was successful? If you had known I was powerful? Would you have treated any Middle Eastern person differently if they weren't famous? The question hung in. Without my usual what, Madison? Suit. Tie. The trappings of success that make Arabs acceptable in your world. Studio assistant Kim continued recording as one of the most successful artist-producer relationships in modern music imploded in real time. The songs that made you famous, Khalil continued, his voice carrying across the studio, were created by the same Palestinian-American producer you just called a terrorist. Dreams Come True, Midnight Stars, Forever Young, all produced by the man you wanted removed by security. The irony was devastating. Madison's biggest hits, the songs that had earned her millions of dollars and worldwide fame, had been created by the same person she had just tried to have arrested. David Chin's voice came through the phone again. Madison, are you there? Yes, Mr. Chun, she replied weakly. Your contract with Universal Music Group includes a morality clause. Discriminatory behavior towards staff, especially our top producers, violates that agreement. We'll be reviewing your contract status immediately. The threat was clear. Madison's recording career could end because of her racist outburst. But Khalil wasn't finished. He gestured toward the walls of the studio, which were covered with gold and platinum albums. Madison, do you see those awards? 18 of them are for albums I produced, including 4 of yours. The visual evidence was overwhelming. The studio walls told the story of Khalil's incredible success, Grammy Awards, Billboard achievements, industry honors spanning 2 decades. Jenny, Khalil called to the studio assistant. Would you mind reading the credits on Madison's first album? Jenny Kim picked up the platinum plaque for Rising Star, Madison's breakthrough album. Produced by Khalil Mansour. Executive producer, Khalil Mansour. Sound engineering, Khalil Mansour. Each credit was another blow to Madison's rapidly crumbling world. The man she had insulted was responsible for virtually every aspect of her professional success. Mike Rodriguez spoke up. Mr. Mansour, I want to apologize for not recognizing you immediately. This should never have happened. Mike, recognition isn't the issue. The issue is that a Palestinian American was treated as a terrorist threat in his own studio by people who benefit from his work. Live streams began appearing on social media as studio personnel shared what was unfolding. Hashtag Madison Blake Racist began trending as thousands of viewers watched a superstar's career implode due to her own prejudice. Keisha Johnson, Madison's backup singer, finally spoke directly. Madison, this is exactly the kind of racism I've been telling you about in the industry. Now you've done it to the person who made your career possible. Trevor Walsh tried desperate damage control. Mr. Mansour, surely we can resolve this misunderstanding privately. Madison was just concerned about studio security. Security? Khalil's laugh was bitter. Trevor, you've been my business partner for 5 years. You know me personally. Yet you were ready to have me arrested because I looked suspicious in my own facility. The accusation was accurate and devastating. Walsh had indeed worked closely with Khalil on dozens of projects, but seeing him in casual clothes had somehow erased years of professional relationship. Universal Music Group CEO Chun made the call that would change everything. Khalil, I'm authorizing you to terminate any contracts you feel appropriate. This behavior cannot be tolerated. The power dynamic shifted instantly. Khalil Mansour, as owner of Harmony Studios and exclusive producer for Universal, had the authority to end careers with a single decision. Madison, Khalil said quietly, your recording contract was specifically with me as producer. As of this moment, that relationship is terminated. The words ended Madison Blake's career with the same label that had made her famous. But Khalil wasn't finished reforming the situation. He turned to address everyone in the studio. What happened here today happens to Arab Americans, Muslim Americans, and Palestinian Americans every day in workplaces across the country. The difference is that most of them don't have the power to fight back. His voice carried the weight of experience and the authority of success. I built this studio. I created the technology you use. I produced the music that pays your salaries. But because of my appearance and my heritage, I was treated as a threat in my own business. Jenny Kim continued recording as Khalil delivered what became one of the most powerful speeches about workplace discrimination ever captured on video. The music industry talks about diversity and inclusion, but today you've seen how quickly those values disappear when faced with unconscious bias and prejudice. 6 months later, the incident had transformed the industry. Madison Blake's contract was terminated, and her career never recovered from the viral video of her racist outburst. Khalil used the attention to establish the Mansour Foundation, supporting young musicians from underrepresented communities who faced barriers in the industry. Several other artists came forward with their own stories of discrimination, leading to industry-wide reforms in how record labels addressed bias and prejudice. Jenny Kim became one of the most sought-after sound engineers in the industry, with Khalil personally mentoring her career advancement. Mike Rodriguez was promoted to head engineer at Harmony Studios, with his willingness to acknowledge mistakes, making him a valuable part of Khalil's reform team. The studio where the incident occurred was renamed the Dignity and Respect Recording Complex, becoming a symbol of the industry's commitment to treating all artists and professionals with equal respect. And Khalil Mansour continued producing hit albums, but now with a new mission, ensuring that the next generation of Palestinian American, Arab American, and Muslim American musicians would find doors open instead of barriers based on prejudice. His Grammy acceptance speech that year concluded with words that became a rallying cry for industry reform. Music transcends boundaries, but the music business must transcend prejudice. The speech was viewed over 50 million times and sparked conversations about bias in entertainment industries worldwide. Madison Blake eventually issued a public apology and spent years in therapy addressing her prejudices. She never returned to her previous level of success, but she became an advocate for racial justice education, using her experience as a cautionary tale. The incident became required study in music business courses as an example of how prejudice could destroy careers and relationships built over years of collaboration. But perhaps the most important legacy was the young Arab-American musicians who entered the industry knowing that Khalil Mansour had fought for their place at the table, ensuring that talent would be judged by artistic merit rather than ethnic appearance. The studio incident proved that confronting discrimination required both courage and power, and that sometimes the most effective response to prejudice was simply refusing to accept it as normal or inevitable.